In at least 2010 and at least 2021, the Alexander brothers worked together and with others to repeatedly and violently drug, sexually assault, and rape dozens of female victims. The Alexander brothers reside primarily in New York and Miami. Alleged, Oren and Tal Alexander were real estate agents who focus on ultra-luxury markets. Alon Alexander, who was Oren's twin, was an executive of a private security firm owned and operated by his family. As alleged, the defendants used their wealth and positions to create and facilitate opportunities to sexually assault women. In particular, Oren and Tal Alexander allegedly used their prominent positions in the real estate industry to induce women to come to events and parties. At those parties, and sometimes afterwards, the women were sexually assaulted by one or more of the defendants. As alleged in the indictment, for years, the Alexander brothers, sometimes with others, also arranged domestic and international trips to carry out their sex trafficking scheme. To recruit and induce women to come on the trips, they provided material benefits, things like travel to vacation destinations, luxury accommodations, and access to other high-end experiences. As alleged, the Alexander brothers met their trafficking victims through a variety of means: in person, over social media, on dating apps, and through social connections. At times, they allegedly used their social connections or the guise of starting a relationship to lure women into their orbit. The indictment alleges that after meeting their victims, the Alexander brothers would invite the victims to a vacation property or location. The Alexander brothers and other men they planned the trips with paid for the flights or accommodations for the women on these trips. And at times, the defendants handpicked the women to invite. At other times, they used paid party promoters to source women for them. The indictment also alleges that in advance of these events, the Alexander brothers and others procured drugs that they agreed to provide to the women, including cocaine, mushrooms, and GHB. As we allege, these drugs caused some of the women to be physically unable to fight back or to escape. Then, as alleged, the Alexander brothers, sometimes acting alone, sometimes with each other, and sometimes with other men, forcibly raped and assaulted the women. As the indictment alleges, the Alexander brothers' sex trafficking agreement went beyond the planned trips and events. On numerous occasions, one or more of the defendants drugged and raped or sexually assaulted women they encountered by chance, at bars, at nightclubs, social events, and dating apps. These assaults allegedly had many of the same hallmarks as the rapes that occurred at group events: isolated locations, drugged victims, force, and physical restraint. As of today, law enforcement has interviewed dozens of women who reported being forcibly raped or sexually assaulted by at least one of the Alexander brothers. This conduct, as alleged, was heinous. I stood here several months ago and made clear that this office is firmly committed to prosecuting individuals who exploit and abuse women. I meant what I said. With our law enforcement partners, this office is determined to investigate and prosecute anyone who engages in sex trafficking, no matter how powerful or wealthy or famous you may be. And let me add this: we are not done. I encourage anyone with information about this case to come forward and to do so quickly. You can call 212-384-2700. You can also email at alexander-case@fbi.gov. I want to thank our partners at the FBI NYPD Child Exploitation and Human Trafficking Task Force here in New York and FBI Miami, who have worked extraordinarily hard to ensure that justice was done in this case. I'm proud to work alongside you. I also want to thank the Miami-Dade County State's Attorney's Office and the Miami Beach Police Department for their invaluable assistance and coordination on today's arrest. And I want to thank the outstanding career prosecutors from my office who are handling this case: Kaya Arroyo, Elizabeth Espinosa, and Andrew Jones, and their supervisors, Jackie Kelly and Jamie Bagliebter, the chiefs of the Civil Rights Unit in our criminal division. Now I'm going to turn the podium over to FBI Assistant Director in Charge, James Dennehy.
Thank you, Damien. Good afternoon. I'm Jim Dennehy, Assistant Director in Charge of the FBI's New York office. The charges unsealed today for Tal, Oren, and Alon Alexander detail heinous crimes allegedly carried out by these individuals. The Alexander brothers allegedly conspired to prey on innocent women, coercing them into engaging in sexual acts. The defendants allegedly used their wealth and status to recruit and pay for the travel of their intended victims, and then manipulated them into participating in sexual acts without their consent. The FBI's investigations into these types of cases are only possible because of the bravery victims show in coming forward. We are committed to doing everything in our power to advocate for victims. The FBI has dedicated professionals ready to support them. We will hold those who victimize them responsible for their actions. If you or someone you know is a victim in this case, the number to call is 1-800-CALL-FBI, or email us at alexander-case@fbi.gov. We will not allow this type of alleged behavior to go unimpeded. Predators forcefully coercing victims into sexual acts cannot and will not be tolerated. The FBI, along with our law enforcement partners, are committed to investigating sex trafficking and ensuring anyone attempting to engage in it is held accountable in the criminal justice system. I'd like to thank the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Damian Williams, and the members of SDNY's Civil Rights Unit. I'd also like to thank the NYPD's Detective Bureau and its Specialty Enforcement Division and Special Victims Division, Human Trafficking Unit, and the FBI Miami Field Office. I'd also like to thank the Miami Beach Police Department, the Bal Harbor Police Department, and the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office Human Trafficking Task Force. And finally, I'd like to thank the dedicated investigators and personnel from the FBI NYPD Child Exploitation Human Trafficking Task Force. Thank you.
All right, I'll take some questions.
Right here. Alice, CBS.
You said dozens of victims. Can you be a little bit more specific in terms of number of victims?
I can't be more specific. There is more detail that's laid out in the detention letter that we have filed at this point. We have filed it, so it's publicly available. And we talk about, we've interviewed a lot of people, and that the conduct that we've been investigating goes all the way back to when these defendants were in high school. And so the number is quite significant in terms of victims. Next question.
Darla, ABC.
Good afternoon. Can you talk about when your office began this investigation, if it coincided with any civil lawsuit that was filed? So how long has your office been investigating it? And also explain the timing of today's arrest. Was there something in particular that precipitated this arrest today? Just if you can explain the timeline going back and why today.
Sure, so I can answer part of the question. So the detail as to whether or when we opened the investigation is not in any public document, so I won't be able to speak to that. In terms of the timing, I mean, we go when we're ready. We mentioned that there was an action in coordination with the Miami-Dade County State's Attorney. They have their own charging instrument as well. And so we were able to move together. So the charges were brought at the earliest opportunity that we could bring them, and that's why we're here today. Next question.
Fox News. Yes, thank you. Hi, Arthur Chen from Fox 5. You indicated that there were others involved. Are there other people that you're looking for? And will the brothers be coming here to New York because it's a Southern District case?
So they will be coming to New York. The mechanics for that are not worth getting into, but we will be able to get them into federal custody and up here to answer these charges here in New York. In terms of other people that we're looking at, I can't get into who else is under investigation. I will just repeat what we said, not only in the indictment but in my remarks, that they were not acting alone. I reference other people. And so we will continue investigating as long and as hard as it takes to get to the bottom of the full scope of the conduct that we have here. Next question.
Luke Cohen, Reuters.
Hi, thanks so much for doing this. You mentioned the office's firm commitment to rooting out sex trafficking. Has there been any sort of surge in resources to the Civil Rights Division, a change in emphasis internally? How have you acted on that commitment? How have you brought so many of these cases?
Well, I mean, it really is because of the extraordinary work of the career prosecutors to my left. That's number one. The Southern District has always been committed to bringing big, expansive, ambitious sex trafficking cases that send a message to predators and people who support them that conduct is heinous and has to absolutely stop. When I became U.S. Attorney, I did note that the responsibility for investigating sex trafficking was rather diffuse all across the office. And so we stood up a civil rights unit in the criminal division to not only address the spike in hate crimes and other types of offenses that I thought needed more focus, but also to centralize the handling of sex trafficking work. And so you recently saw the case against Sean Combs that we announced. That was out of our civil rights unit, and now this one. And so, yes, there has been additional resources and time and attention, and they're bringing their expertise to bear along with our law enforcement partners who have long been committed to this work. But I'm very proud of everything that they're doing and expect that to continue in the future. Next question.
Molly Crane, Daily News.
Hi, Damien. Thank you for having us.
Of course.
Just a quick question. This is a superseding indictment. Can you shed some light on what preceded it, or is there something more there that we're not seeing?
There is something more there, but it's not worth seeing, I would say. But I know you're not going to take my word for it, but you have to take my word for it at this point. Okay, next question.
Hi. This is such an interesting case because, as you mentioned, it dates back over a decade, I believe, and with so many different women allegedly involved in this, I'm just wondering if you can speak to the seriousity of the charges and some of the complications or challenges that you might have in gathering evidence and testimony in a case like this.
Well, we always have complexity in these kinds of cases. They're very sensitive. People have already been victimized, and engaging with law enforcement is in and of itself requires a leap of faith, right? That accountability can be at the end of that process. Another reason why I'm so proud of the career prosecutors and agents who work on these kinds of cases is that they understand how to approach them appropriately, to be able to bring comfort to the victims, to build trust with victims, and understand that it's a very fraught process to have to explain some of the darkest moments of someone's life, yet again, in a law enforcement context. Another reason why it's important that I reiterate the call for people out there, if they have been victimized, if they know information about these three defendants, that they come forward and know that they're going to be in good hands speaking to us, and that we're absolutely going to do right by them. And so that is always a challenge. It's a challenge in this case, but as you can see from today's indictment, it's one that we are prepared to overcome.
And you mentioned you believe this behavior may have started in high school. Do you expect more victims to come forward?
That's the hope. And over time, just through our practice and seeing how these cases play out, more often than not, more people do come forward. It does take a tremendous bravery, as Jim said, for the victims to speak out, but when they do, other people tend to gather that bravery as well. Bravery can be very infectious, especially in this kind of context, and that's our hope in bringing this case right now. Next question.
Roger Stern.
Can you tell us what happened to these women after they were victimized? They were flown to locations. Were they just left on the street? Were they flown home? What happened to them?
Well, I would refer you to the detention memo that we filed. It has some details, including some very specific details about more than one victim and their experience, not only leading up to the incident that we alleged, but also following the incident. And it's not worth me repeating right now, but these women were not cared for in any way at any point in the process. And yet another reason why I think it's important that we bring these kinds of actions to hold people who, after thorough investigation, we believe have committed these types of crimes.
Last question, Kara Scannell, CNN.
Thanks, Damien. I have two questions. The first one, this is multiple times that you've been at this podium talking about predatory, wealthy men abusing, raping, assaulting women or men. And I'm curious, how many more types of cases like this do you have in the pipeline?
I can't give you an exact number, of course, but what I can say is that we are unfortunately busy with sex trafficking investigations, trafficking of all forms, human trafficking, labor trafficking. It's an area that we are very active in and focused on. It's not just the powerful, though. Obviously, those kinds of cases get more attention than others. I think we have seen over time that this kind of conduct, no one is immune from it. There are victims of all sorts. And the ones that keep me up the most at night are the ones where the people who have been victimized don't think that they have the ability to hold the wrongdoers accountable because they are not famous or are well known. And so it really spans the gamut, I would say. And it's another reason why we're committed to this work, to make sure that someone is looking out for these people, and that people who are out there, whether they're rich and famous or not, know that on the other side of this conduct, if there are people like the FBI and the NYPD and the Southern District of New York Civil Rights Unit out there working it, there will be accountability. Even if it takes a little bit of time, there will be accountability. Thank you, everyone.
One last question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Are you guys involved in the investigation of Luigi Mangione?
I don't have any announcements to make right now on that matter. I know everyone is tracking it very carefully, but we don't have anything to add at this point. All right, thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone.